you're literally walking down, 2 foot away from a 3,000 sheer foot drop, and your legs, it's like you've just done the biggest leg session of your life.
You've trained some big names in the world of TV, sport, film.
He said, I rise through the floor on a sunbed in my underwear, take my robe off to reveal, and then he looked at me, he dropped his trousers, took his shirt off and went.
So today's guest is someone who's built a career training some of the biggest names in the world, from music industry and even royalty. He's transformed actors for film and TV, he's prepped pop stars for world tours, and even graced the cover of Men's Health himself. But his journey is far from conventional. From overcoming life-threatening setbacks to launching his own coaching business, he's a walking example of resilience, adaptability, and what it takes to build a body that lasts. But beyond that, he's a proud father and a husband to an incredible and I believe a patient wife, as something James considers his greatest success. And looking back at how lucky he is to actually have made 40, I think this is going to be an incredible conversation talking about pushing to the limits, overcoming adversity. So let's get into it and welcome James to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No worries. Let's jump back into sort of the early part of your career. Most people who end up training actors, pop stars and celebrities sort of follow perhaps a traditional route, a network and a steady climb up the ranks. But your journey's been something perhaps not really typical, but from working from a physio in central London was the early part of your career, to then going into a PT business, training film stars, and even landing the cover of Men's Health. Your past has been full of unexpected twists and turns. Looking back, what were some of the key moments that shaped your career?
It's funny that you when I think of the word career, I think of a very set path. People embark on careers normally. I imagine it in central London, they work for a bank and they have a career path ahead of them. And so it's funny hearing someone describe my career, because to me it's been, I wouldn't say chaotic, but it's not been planned. Like I never set out as a physiotherapist to go into personal training. I never set out to go into coaching. It's just been a natural evolution through working with clients and seeing what I was passionate about, what they needed, what I enjoyed, what they enjoyed. It's funny hearing it described as a career. I'd say it was quite unconventional when I look back, in that I never really had any idea, thinking back, my transition from a personal physiotherapist into personal training, I had no idea what personal training really looked like. I'd never had a personal training session. I didn't do a conventional personal training course. I just sort of did what I thought it should look like. And I still have no idea really whether that's what PT sessions look like now. I have no idea.
Well, that's cool though. And it's quite nice to not have necessarily, like you say, like in a career path of you go to school, you get your GCSEs, A levels, then you go in and like you say, get in a bank, you start at the cashier and you work your way up to sort of trading and stuff like that. But dare I say, was there any sort of moments in those transitions where you felt completely out of your depth or had sort of self-doubt through some of those things? I mean, is there anything that sort of pulled yourself?
Every single step. Initially, like I knew from a very early age I wanted to be a physiotherapist. Rugby injury, went to see a physio. He fixed my knee pain in literally 15 minutes. And I thought he was a magician. And so I was like, I want to be a physio. That's incredible what he did. So my early part was very clear. Get my A levels, go to university, get my degree. So that was all set. So I never felt necessarily lost in that period. And then once I'd graduated, I went backpacking. I'd worked pretty hard, so I was like, I deserve some time traveling. I want to see the world. That lasted about 2 years. So I backpacked all over the place, but a year in Asia, South America, Central America, and just me in a backpack. So when I came back, I was a little bit unsure about what I was going to do then. And then I managed to get involved with a clinic in central London. And it was a dream job because I wasn't technically employed by them. I was still doing my own thing, but I was under their umbrella and I got to work alongside a team of amazing physiotherapists and work as their rehab specialist. It was a dream, really was a dream. I felt out of my depth when I started as a physio. When I eventually moved into personal training, I felt out of my depth there. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what I needed to do, but the reality was I had no personal training experience. The qualification I did for personal training wasn't normal. I'd skipped and went ahead to like a diploma. So in a way it was beneficial, because I skipped a lot of the what I would call nonsense that PTs go through, and I trained people the way that I felt that they needed to be trained. And I think that served me really well.
Now you're into your coaching and launching your own coaching business. What was the next step for you there? Because coming into a quite a competitive space anyway with some big names, was there any sort of like, okay, this is where I need to go, next progression in what you've already learned from your physios into your PT career? And then, like you said, some of your direction has been picked up by the clients that you've been around you. Have you found that next leap into coaching business quite natural, or has there been sort of a, oh, how did I end up here sort of moment?
I found it quite natural. I think you get to a point with personal training where you realize that it's just a band-aid. I think if personal trainers were really honest, they would tell you that it is a band-aid. That actually, if these clients see them consistently over a long period of time, they get results. But ultimately, if they left them and checked in with them in a year's time, they'd be back at square one. Temporary solution to a long-term problem. And at some point as a PT, you've got to acknowledge that what you're doing is not changing people's lives on a deep enough level. That's just the reality. So you have a choice. Do I want to do this for the rest of my life and not really change people's lives? Or do we do something different and going at a much deeper level and actually change people's lives for good? And the only way for me to do that is with coaching. It wasn't like, I think I should be a coach or an online coach. It's just a simple question of how do I change people's lives? How do I do that to the most amount of people possible? Well, that's coaching and that's online. So as we spoke about before, there was a lot of naivety on my part in terms of what that meant in terms of a business, what that requires, idea. But again, I just threw myself into it, invested in myself. Like I invested into coaches and mentors that had done it, that knew what to do, so I could steepen that learning curve and made sure that I had a good setting, good foundation to build from. I think that was key. I often talk to people about investing in themselves. You're buying their mistakes, you're buying their experience, and you're shortening your learning curve. In theory, I could have done it all myself. But the help I got in the first year saved me years and years of trial and error.
So when you went back into your first clinic, that you thought, right, I've got all my qualifications, I know the bee's knees, I know everything. And then you get in there and you're like, wow, okay, these guys are on another level. And then they'll be like, oh, did you know when you assess them and do this, you can see this movement? You're like, oh, okay, cool. So like you say, you're trying to flatten that learning curve and get up to a level where you can actually have more value. And also from being on a PT one-on-one basis, you get to see clients, they get to open up about things. So you can start to go, well, seeing me 2 times a week or 3 times a week is only going to get you so far, rather than actually, if we have this strategy or this system in place, this is where you can actually get to.
Yes. Like, that is exactly it. If I take myself out of this, how well are you going to do? And I can coach people so they are completely self-sufficient. That's the goal. Goal is I coach you and set you up on a different trajectory for the rest of your life. The goal of the program is to get results in the short term. Sure. Ultimately, I want these guys to look back in 5, 10, 20, 30 years time and be like, that program with James ultimately changed how I see food, exercise, myself. And that is the reason why I'm a fit, strong 70, 80, 90-year-old. Because of the things I learned back then. That's the mission. That's the goal.
So I could dare I say then, if we come back a little bit, because this has opened up quite a nice sort of little tangent slightly, but to get to where you are, you've had to gain a lot of experience. So somebody that's just come out of university can't really go in and be coaching at this level. They've got to have some background experience and life experience and things like that. You've potentially have trained some big names in the world of TV, sport, film, magazines and stuff like that. What we see on the screen or what we see on the magazine is just a tip of the iceberg. There's lots of things that happen behind the scene for months or years. When you sort of prep actors or film stars or musicians, what's one of the most intense physical transformations that you've been part of?
Quite a few. I think they've all been pretty intense because the different clients, there was always a different goal. So, for example, a pop star that has a world tour, there is an awful lot of pressure that she put on her own shoulders because she has a world tour. So there's an expectation for her to perform and be a certain way. And there was a lot of work for her to do. So it's not necessarily a change in physical appearance for that specific person. It's more of a preparation, physical strength, physical fitness, so she can perform night after night and deal with the travel. Others, it is a physical transformation, and he will not mind me talking about this. Early on with Matt Smith, he did a play, and this was a long time ago. He did a play, American Psycho, based on the film. Obviously, the guy, in the film, the guy is shredded, and they wanted him to be the same. And I remember he was 10 weeks out, and I was round his house, and he'd got the script through. And he read out the opening paragraph of the script, and it said, I rise through the floor on a sunbed in my underwear. I step forward to reveal, take my robe off to reveal a shredded physique, six pack, and all this stuff. And then he looked at me, he dropped his trousers, took his shirt off, and went, 10 weeks. And he was nowhere near what he needed to be. We were laughing about it, but that was intense. We trained every day, and he got there. He got six pack. He looked great for the show. That was intense.
And I suppose it's a bit like you were saying earlier on, like a band-aid. It's getting you a result because you're there holding their hands and they've got an end goal. After that film or production, that band-aid comes off and they go back to normal life, whatever that might be. And I'd imagine between those people you just mentioned there, or those scenarios, the highs and the lows, like the mental side of that process, like say just the physical, but also the mental side. There must be some very deep lows, I would imagine.
There is. I mean, I trained an actress she was in one of the X-Men movies. She had a big role in it. And the company, I won't name the company, but
No, yeah.
he wanted her to lose a stone. She didn't have a stone to lose. Like, she just didn't have it to lose. And they wanted her to lose it in something like 3 or 4 weeks. And speaking to her about it, she was going to be zipped up in a ridiculous latex outfit. And it wasn't the fact that she was worried about how she looked. She knew the actresses she was going to be alongside on screen. That was her fear. She's like, I'm with these other actresses. I know that they are smaller than me. I know that the production company want me to come in and wear this one outfit and be this certain size. And it could be really, really detrimental to their mental health and their long-term physical health. And yeah, look, these guys are getting compensated, like, for the roles they're playing, the jobs they're doing, and they're not asking for sympathy. Believe you me, they're more than happy to work and train hard and do what's required, but it's intense, and it does affect all of them in many different ways.
And then you've seen those people, and I mentioned the chap who got shredded. You've been fortunate enough to make the cover of a Men's Health magazine, where most fitness professionals only ever dream of it and very few actually ever achieve it. What was that process like for you, and how far out did you start sort of prepping? And was there anything sort of more difficult or more challenging for you during that process to get ready for the shoot, or even the shoot itself?
Yeah, I mean, the Men's Health shoot was an experience in itself. I had no idea what to expect. So I walked in to a warehouse with a gym, a floor for the shoot, and like a mezzanine, an upstairs mezzanine area. And when I went up, the table was occupied by a lot of the biggest names in the fitness industry in terms of, fitness modeling. Got all guys that I'd seen had done multiple Men's Health shoots that were always inside the magazine. All the guys that I recognized. And I was a newbie. And just because you shoot on the day doesn't mean you get the cover. Like, you're there, you shoot, and then if they like the shots, they might use them. But no guarantees. And it was the most bizarre scene. No, I did really one of my first ever fitness shoots. And they were all sat around the table. And this was like 12 o'clock in the day. There was red wine everywhere, gummy bears everywhere. And they were all drinking. And I was like, this is not what I expected. One of the guys who's done a lot of shoots took me under his wing, sat me down, gave me a glass of red wine, topped it up with cough syrup, and said, drink this, gave me a load of gummy bears and eat this, and then go and train. So we're all in the gym. It was bizarre. But the idea is that, it helps with vascularity and gets you pumped up before the shoot and all this stuff. And it sounds funny, and it is funny talking about it. But at the time, like, these little things, they make a difference. Like, they want you to look a very certain way on camera for a very precise moment in time. And so these things, they do make a difference. It was just bizarre. Yeah, it was an interesting day. It was an experience.
Sort of how far out did you sort of have to start, say, cutting or getting lean? Or is it a case of they gave you a deadline and say, right, we're going to do a shoot here, and then you work so many weeks out? Or is it just...
Yeah, I mean, I started dieting like 12 weeks out. I mean, and actually it happened. I remember the shoot happened at the beginning part of the year. like early Q1. So I had Christmas that I navigated, which was, yeah, my Christmas was not a normal Christmas. But I actually, at the time, thinking back, I really wanted to cover. Like when I was younger, I had like not a bucket list, but I had like a top 10 things that I wanted in my life. And strangely enough, one of the things I was like, I want to be on the front cover of Men's Health. I was just like, that'd be cool to do a front cover of Men's Health. I want that. And so when the opportunity came up, I was like, I'm all in. I'm going to give it every single ounce of energy that I've got, and I want to be on the cover. And yeah, I was lucky. I got a couple of Men's Health covers in the end. I think I was fortunate, but I did work really hard for it.
You've got to put yourself in the mix. And if you're saying there's going to be X number of other people there, all doing the same thing, all vying for either inside the magazine or the cover, and it's just for that, like you say, that nanosecond that the camera flashes at you for, I know, 50 shots, they choose one of those out of all the other ones. It's quite small.
I mean, they take thousands of shots, and it was great. Like it opened up a few doors. Like I ended up working for Men's Health for years. I mean, for a period of like 2 or 3 years, I did 90% of their inside stuff. Like I did a lot. Like it's funny, every now and again, a client last year was laughing because he picked up an old Men's Health magazine and he was flicking through it and it was all pictures of me demonstrating exercises. And he found that quite amusing.
Didn't then say, hang on, you don't coach me to do this now. What's this technique like here?
There was a lot of questionable exercises back then. Like,
With everything that you've achieved, people can almost assume it's been an easy ride to a degree, as in you're there, get taken under the wing, you've done well. But we all know that's never the case. And you faced some really big setbacks that probably would break most people. And instead of letting them stop you, they've seemed to fuel you a little bit more of recovering from being stabbed, was it twice when you're 18? Most people can't even imagine that. And then recovering from a prolapsed disc in your neck. Like, how did
that was bad.
those experiences shape you and build you sort of more resilient and better health than what you've got now?
I guess I'm just stubborn. Like I think I'm just stubborn. Like I think I've got a plan, got a mission, and whatever gets in my way, I'm gonna just work through. I think I'm quite stoic in that way, in that I expect bad things to happen. This sounds really bad, but I do expect life to throw grenades at me. And I do expect sometimes things are going to go well and sometimes things aren't going to go well. And we're going to continue anyway. We're going to continue doing what we've got to do. I've got a family and we have goals as a family of the life that we are living and the life that we want to live. That's not going to change. So these things can happen, but ultimately it's our response to those things that matters the most, not the fact that they've happened. So the neck injury was a bad one. I'm not quite sure how it happened. At the time I was training for a world record tire flip, which unfortunately never happened, partly because of the neck injury. I do know that it likely happened because I was tired. I've got a 2-year-old. At the time he was 1, and I was having a lot of sleepless nights, and my sleep hadn't been good for a year, and I just tried to push through, which was in hindsight a big mistake. I had a big disc prolapse in my neck, and I'd never experienced pain like it. When I went to see the specialist in Harley Street, I said, is this normal to be in this much pain? And he was like, well, have you had any suicidal thoughts? I said, I wouldn't say suicidal, but I mean, I did think if I got hit by a bus, would I be in less pain? He said, yeah. He said that's about sums it up. He said, actually, that disc prolapse, the size of your prolapse, it's about as much pain neurological pain as you can experience. And I mean, that was probably the hardest thing I've ever been through personally. I mean, I was having to sleep upright, taking a lot of painkillers, and I couldn't hold a thought. It's what I remember. Like I was in that much pain that I couldn't hold a thought or finish a sentence in my head because the pain was just blinding.
And you said you had a young family then as well.
1-year-old, with a 5-year-old at the time. But I still trained. I still went to the gym. I still did what I could. I still worked. I still built my business. These things are there to shape you, but they can't define you. Got to work around it. You've got to find a workaround. I did.
That's a really good resilience level, isn't it?
Have to. It's no other choice. Like most days I wanted to curl up into the fetal position and cry. That's the reality. That's what I wanted to do. But then like that's not going to help. Still got to crack on with things. Still got to carry on. And I think probably getting through that's probably one of the proudest things I've done. And I doubted myself a lot. and I doubted what was going to happen to me or if I could cope with that injury. But ultimately, I did, and it's made me stronger.
What was sort of, now listening to that, if somebody was struggling with their own setbacks listening to this now, what would sort of be your maybe 2 or 3 pointers or theories that you've gone through that you could pass on to somebody else to help them through their own setback?
Beat yourself up about it. Take a short amount of time to reflect on it, to try and understand what's gone wrong and why, and what part and what role you played in that going wrong, and take ownership and responsibility for any mistakes that you've made, and then draw a line under it and decide to move on, and don't beat yourself up about it. It's done. Take ownership and then move on, and then just focus on one day at a time. Don't start thinking too far ahead. One day at a time, small improvements, small gains, chip away at it, and don't give up. Like, just don't give up. Like, if you keep showing up, you can't lose. I love that saying. If I just keep showing up, I can't lose. The only way you lose is if you quit. That always resonates with me.
Yeah. And it's almost like changing it from being the prey to almost being not necessarily a predator, but you're being higher up the food chain. Yeah. Turning up every day. And even if you don't turn up and achieve what you really wanted to do, you've still got a tick on turning up.
Yeah. I still trained. I still went to the gym. My wife thought I was absolutely mental, but I was like, well, it's not going to make it. The surgeon was like, look, you can't make it any worse. I was like, cool. So can I train? And he was like, you want to train? I was like, well, yes, what I do. It's who I am. Like, yeah, maybe I'm not going to be deadlifting 200 kilos, but like I'll do what I can. And there's no reason why I can't do other stuff. And he's like, no, not at all. And it kept me sane. Some level of routine of who I am. It kept my sanity. And I kept chipping away, doing what I can, moving when I can, training when I can. And it helped, massively helped.
And I suppose also coming right back then to when you had your knee injury and you went to see the physio that time, you thought they were magic. And they sort of, wow, he's a magician, and turning it up. And then now going through those setbacks, you're like, right, can I turn up every day? I've just got, the bar is set this level. Can I turn up? Can I achieve? Okay, I can't lift. Well, I was lifting, but I'll regress it slightly. So again, you're adapting to your own strategies. Were there, if we go back to your physio time now, leading on from this injury rehab, were there sort of some standout moments or sort of different stories from your time as a physio that sort of helped shape some of your outlook that you perhaps subconsciously have been able to draw back on, like with your own injuries and people that you've helped in the past?
Yeah, you've just training the athletes back from injury. Those guys are devastated when they get injured, especially when they're out for a period of time, especially an ACL injury. Like, they know it's going to be minimum 9 months, potentially nearer a year. But they're shifting their mindset and watching them go through a mindset change of, I'm not playing anymore. Therefore, this is now my focus, and just focusing on one day at a time, chipping away. Yeah, that's really helped shaped. I've had a lot of injuries over the years. That really helped shape a lot of mine. Thinking back, I went snowboarding and I managed to break my arm in 3 places and my foot. So I was actually working in that clinic with an arm cast and a leg cast.
My gosh.
That was a bad time. I was hobbling around on a crutch teaching people rehab.
Yeah.
And that took me
Don't do what I've done on this side.
Don't do what I've done. That took a long time to recover from, actually. And when I went back to the gym, that I had to have time off from the gym with that. I couldn't train around it because I'd broken nearly everything. When I went back, I couldn't pick up a barbell. That was tough. I remember I went on a bench, went to lift the bar off, couldn't unrack the bar from the rack. That was humbling.
Yeah.
That was a humbling experience.
So you're almost starting back from zero again then, aren't you? So with you experiencing your PTs or your coaching clients, you know what it's like to come back in from ground zero.
Yes, physically, yes, emotionally, yes, energy. Like, I've been empty, many, many times. So I do understand what it takes to build from empty, from zero, from minus. Like, I do know what it takes. It's not easy. It's never easy, but it is possible.
Which is lovely. And again, with you then being able to now do your coaching and things, and we'll come on to that in a moment, having that vast wealth of experience from your own personal journey, you can relate to your clients much, much better. But I'm sure probably there are quite serious stories, but I'm sure there's been some funny moments in your journey along the way, working with, dare I say, the high profile clients. I'm sure there's been some perhaps odd requests or hilarious moments behind the scenes. And I think you were saying when you worked with some royalty, I think it was the Saudi royal family or something, without getting yourself in too much trouble, there was a funny moment or something that happened there.
There was lots of funny moments with those guys. I looked after the Saudi diplomatic family in London, and I looked after them, trained majority of the family 5 days a week for nearly 5 years. I would go to the ambassadorial house every day, and there was lots of fun. Those guys were amazing. But I remember one of the girls had a very big, the weddings out there are very big, but her wedding had several thousand people coming. Big traditional, biggest deal you could ever imagine. And she obviously wanted to train hard. She always trained hard, but she wanted to train really hard for this, wanted to be in the best shape possible. And we were a week out. I think it was our last training session before she flew back to Saudi for the wedding. And like, I love my boxing, and the girls, they loved their boxing as well. And over the years, I'd got them very good at boxing on the pads. Like, they look like amateur boxers. We never had a problem before, ever. But this day, she was distracted. She had lots of stuff on her mind about the wedding. And I threw the pad out for her to slip. She slipped tens of thousands of these. She just didn't move. She just didn't slip. And I was looking at something. I was looking at her foot. I'm looking at her footwork. Normally, if that ever happens, I've done this 10 years. If they don't move, last minute, I'll move the pad. It's never happened before. It happened this day. Back to straight in the nose. And she'd had work done on her nose previously. She'd been a footballer growing up, and she'd had her nose broken multiple times. So she'd had some work done on her nose to put it back together after numerous breaks. So when I'd hit her in the nose, her face was just like, I think you've broken it. And then she was like, as long as it doesn't bleed, we're probably good. And as she said that, blood just started trickling out of her nose. She's like, I'm getting married in like a week in front of like 3,000 people, whatever it was. So yeah, there was a big panic, and luckily it wasn't broken. She had a bit of a black eye, which settled very, very quickly, but she never let me forget it. Put it that way. Like I tell you what, I was very nervous at the time. I think it was my insurance covered me for a 3,000 person wedding that they've missed. I'm not sure it will.
Oh, blimey, that is a bit touch and go. And were there sort of any other moments that you can think of that perhaps, like, maybe that you've had to laugh at yourself, that humbling moment lifting the bar?
Yeah.
But anything else that's happened in the time?
Lots. Normally demonstrating things. I had a young client, and they had a home gym. Not a home gym that I'd installed, I might add, but it was a home gym. They had a big frame, one of these dip pull-up normal frames. And I brought in a TRX, loaded the TRX up, and then went to demonstrate just an inverted row. Pulled TRX back, leant back, and went, yeah, just started talking. As I leant back, I could just feel this frame lifting. I was like, that's weird. And this entire frame just came down right on top of me. I mean, he found it absolutely hilarious, but the thing nearly killed me. Yeah. Everything managed to flip it. I mean, I don't know how it didn't kill me, but yeah, it was embarrassing to say the least.
No. And earlier on, you mentioned that you took 2 years out to go backpacking. You've done some pretty adventurous things outside of the fitness industry as well, from going to, I think you said, South America.
Stupid things.
And even diving with great white sharks, I think, wasn't it? What do you think some of these experiences have taught you about life, or even that you can bring into your coaching business now?
I think life's to be lived. I think in the health and fitness industry, we can really lose sight of the fact that actually life is to be enjoyed. Life is to be lived to its absolute fullest. And that doesn't mean being in peak physical shape and living like a monk. Like, yes, we should be striving to be healthy, to be active, to have a long and fruitful life. But that gives us the chance to then go and live our life, to do crazy things, to live to not necessarily the extremes, but to live life to its fullest. I think that's one of the misconceptions about the entire industry. So we're not trying to make you into a monk. It's necessarily like a peak athlete. We're trying to get you to live a healthier, stronger life so that you can go and enjoy it. You go and enjoy that meal, go and enjoy that holiday, go and do that thing that you said you wanted to do, but you've been putting it off because you don't think you can climb that mountain, or you don't think you could cope with that much travel, or you don't think you've got the energy to do that hike or that climb or whatever it is. But life's to be lived. And to me, I've always wanted to live, less so now with the kids. But in my early part of my life, I was acutely aware that having no responsibilities, was my opportunity to go and push the boundaries of what I could do. I mean, I'd have a heart attack now if my kids told me they wanted to go and do anything similar, even a fraction of what I did. Like, I had more than 9 lives when I backpacked. Like, when I think back now, the amount of times that I could quite have easily lost my life, and it was just another day backpacking. I was just like, it'd be all right. That was funny. And I
Yeah.
look back now and I couldn't imagine my kids doing it, but now I'm still here. I'm very glad that I did it in the way that I did it. But life's to be lived. Like, you've got to go out there and live it to its fullest.
You mentioned something like climbing mountains and things like that, and we can probably relate that to sort of fitness journeys. And I think there was a time when we met previously that you were talking about it's not the journey up to the top of the mountain, it's also once you get to the summit, it's then about concentrating on the way down as well.
I use that analogy all the time. Mountaineering's just a great example of other things in life. That example you just give, it's perfect, because most guys are so fixated on a specific moment in time, the summit picture, or in many cases, a number on the scales. They're fixated with this one thing, this one moment in time. So what happens is they go through this by any means necessary. This is what happens in mountaineering. Summit by any means necessary. And what happens is people get to the summit exhausted, or they get to the summit late in the day, too late to give them enough time to get down safely. So on the way down, they're exhausted, they're short on time, so they rush. And this is where people die. In the health and fitness industry, it's a number on the scales by any means necessary. And almost the descent, the other side of that, is completely forgotten. So what happens? Nothing's really changed. So they go back to default habits and routines, and they just regress back to square one. So it's how you climb the mountain which is going to determine the descent, how well you get, and if you get back. That's what no one talks about. It's the same with health and weight loss. How you do this is going to determine whether you continue with it or whether you just go back to the start.
I suppose if I've just got a picture of a mountain, let's say a triangle like that we think to the summit. If we flip it and we make a V, it's okay. It's a race down to get to a number on a scales or a certain way we look. But if you've had to push yourself, you've gone down at a hair of knots. Well, it's like throwing a ball to the floor and then bouncing it back up again. So the faster you come down, the quicker you're going to bounce back up. If we flip that from a mountain to even the V of coming down, isn't it? And I suppose again, it's like that band-aid taking it on and off that we said at the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah. Look, I've been there. I've been up big mountains and I've pushed, I've led from the front, I've broken trail with a Sherpa, showing off in deep snow, summits of mountains because I could. Because I just wanted to be pushed and I wanted to push and I wanted to lead. And then on the way down, they freaking died. Completely like a crash of adrenaline, legs just complete jelly. And you're literally walking down, 2 foot away from a 3,000 sheer foot drop. And your legs, it's like you've just done the biggest leg session of your life. You can't stand up, you're falling over. So I've been in that moment and I know that I was like, well, it's because you were showing off on the way up. Like, you didn't think about the way down. You just assumed it would be okay. And then when it's not, you're like, okay, that is a lesson learned.
And if we come forward slightly, fitness is all about mainstream, is about the quick wins and the quick fixes. But what we're saying here is about if you are in mountaineering, you talk about, yes, it's the summit, but it's also getting back down. So again, it's the up and down, it's the longer game, or almost like with your coaching business, the infinite game, where there isn't really a summit as in sense. It's actually, can I keep summiting repetitively? As in, there's no sort of, not necessarily an end goal, but it's can I keep going and keep winning rather than just, I've been Men's Health magazine, I've done that movie, tick off, and then bound back into something else. There's, dare I say, we can Google how to lose 6 stone in 6 weeks or whatever, or there's a magic hack that's coming out. Is there a standout story from a client that actually, by implementing some of your stuff from the Infinite Games about longevity, wins better than those quick fixes?
Yes. Quite a recent story. A client of mine who is very, very high up in a software company. Now, the pressure that he faces at work of meeting quarterly targets, yearly targets in terms of sales, it's quite common with a lot of the guys that I coach. They have sales targets and quotas that they need to hit. But over time, what happens is that every year, obviously the quota goes up every year because they hit it, and it gets quite tiring. And they have a bit of a drop around the end of year where it's like we've just summited, We've hit our quota, and then our quota is now bigger. And I liken it to a full summit. They have a summit as a target, they hit it, and they get there, and they realize there's a bigger summit. The next one, and they go again, and then there's a next one, and there is no ultimate summit. This will just keep going. It is an infinite game. There will always be another summit. So the reason why they're getting tired is that they have this belief that the next summit is the one that when they get there, they can rest. And when they can't, they get there and they can't rest. It's like a kick to the gut. They have to go again. They have to go again. There's only so many times they can keep going through this cycle and restarting and getting themselves going again for the next summit, the next summit. What they need is to shift their mindset and understand that there's always going to be another summit. That summit is always going to be bigger than the last one. Instead of focusing on that summit, they need to focus on the process, the day-to-day, the values behind what they're doing and why they're doing it. The key, that's what's going to keep them going indefinitely. Not hitting this summit. Yes, they need to know that they're on track for it, sure. But it's the day-to-day, it's being process-driven rather than just outcome-driven. If you're process-driven, if you make this part of your value system, then you will do it day in, day out, regardless. It doesn't become tiring. There's no, thank God that's done. And then you're like, oh, look, what's next? It's not going to sustain you for the rest of your life.
It's like
You have to look inward, has to become part of who you are. You have to be process driven. It just, ultimately, I think you need to change how you view yourself with this and what you value, your why, your North Star. You can be clear with that, then the outcomes will take care of themselves.
So if we're then looking at sort of explaining to somebody that's listening the infinite games, this is sort of a very powerful message about the infinite games and how your sort of coaching system is set up for people, isn't it?
It is. Because the biggest mindset shift that the guys need to make is that there is no finish line with this. With your health, your fitness, then you can't win this game. Like I often use an analogy of getting up to the start line of a marathon. And the way that most guys will approach their health and fitness is they'll get to the start line of a marathon and then the gun will go off and they'll go off at a blistering pace. You've got a whole marathon to run. But with your health and fitness, it's even worse than that because there is no finish line. You've got to play this game for the rest of your life and you're still going off at a sprint. What are you doing? The aim of this game is to play it consistently for the rest of your life so that the way that we learn how to play it becomes paramount. We need to build systems that are sustainable, habits that are sustainable, routines that you can maintain through easy times and through stressful and bad times. And there'll be changes, sure, based on life, what's going on, but you're always playing this game, whether you like it or not. So the aim of my coaching program is to teach these guys how to play this game so they can play it for the rest of their life. There's no on and off.
Powerful. Like you say, the summit and get away from that process driven and something that becomes ingrained. And like say, even when you're coming back from your injuries, showing up, just show up each day.
Has to become part of who you are. You're not training for an outcome. You're training because it's just part of who you are. Guys will look, every guy that comes in, they'll look at someone else and go, this person I know, they're so disciplined. Like, how do they have that much discipline? I don't get it. Like, I want that level of discipline. I want to be disciplined. The reality is that that guy that they know, he's not actually disciplined. I don't think it depends on your definition, but when somebody talks about discipline, how I think about it is they are just acting in alignment with how they see themselves and how they believe others see them. And they are just acting in alignment with that. Because when they don't act in alignment with that, it causes them discomfort, it causes them pain. And they don't like that. So they'll do it no matter what, because that's just who they are. It's how they see themselves. It's part of their identity. And ultimately, that is the heart of behavior change. It's why I went to the gym when I was injured. Not because I wanted an outcome. It's just who I am. It's my value system. And not doing it causes me more pain than doing it. Now, that takes time. Changing how we view ourselves, changing our identity, our self-image. It takes time. It takes time and it takes evidence. You can't just wake up and, the old saying, you can't just shout affirmations in the mirror and wake up a different person. You have to do things consistently over a period of time. But those habits, those routines, they do stack up. And at some point, they will start to form a new self-image, a new identity. And that is when these behaviors become ingrained. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do with these guys. Takes time, but it is possible.
Well, it's probably a bit like coming back to that time when that gym rack fell on top of you. There was enough, the first couple, there wasn't enough inertia, and then there's a little bit, and then all of a sudden it comes down and it almost kills you, you know? It's a sort of similar thing we were saying with the little bits of discipline. It might think, okay, first quarter, you're only focusing on one discipline, but after that, you've ingrained it. And then by the end of the year, you might have 3 or 4 that the snowball starts to gain more momentum.
Yeah.
Rather
Yeah,
than
yeah.
thinking it's just 6 weeks and I'm done. My life is transformed.
That's it. We always think big results. Sorry, we always think if we want a big result, we need big action. That's why guys go all in. That's why they go off at the sprint. I want to lose 10 kilos. Well, that's a massive amount. Therefore, I'm going to go all in, big effort. But actually, the reality is, it's small but consistent habits compound into those big results. You know, if you go all out, it just doesn't last. It never lasted. They know this. They've tried it. It doesn't work. There needs to be a different approach.
Brilliant. And so this brings us on now to a couple of rapid fire questions to wrap the episode up. I could carry on talking for a lot longer. There's so many more ways, and I think we're really aligned with some of the views that we're talking about with your coaching program. But what's one of the health and fitness trends that should absolutely just do?
Carnivore diet needs to do one.
Okay.
Jesus. Do not follow that diet, people. It's terrible.
What's one piece of advice you would wish you'd got given earlier in your path to where you are rather than career?
Trust your gut. My gut's always right. Always. And I think the delay between the transitions through physio to PT, PT to coach were delayed because I knew that I had to make them, but I had the feeling that I had to make them, but I delayed making them. And I think I wish that I'd made them all earlier in hindsight, or I could have made them earlier in hindsight. And I think that comes down to just having a bit more faith in my gut feeling.
Feeling perfect. And what's the craziest thing you've ever done to push your own limits?
There's a fair amount that I've done. I think the craziest thing that I've ever done, the thing that I did, and in the exact moment it happened, I realized that I'd made a massive mistake. I ran Dead Man's Corner at the Pamplona Bull Run. It wasn't just enough to run the Pamplona Bull Run. I slept on the track, so I'd had 2 hours sleep. I woke up outside the bullpen. Yeah, I didn't want to miss the race. And then with a friend decided that we were going to run Dead Man's Corner because that's the corner where most people die. So of course we had to run Dead Man's Corner, and it was a slope with a 90-degree turn. And if you got caught on the outside, it was game over. So of course we had to run that corner. And when I saw the 9 bulls charging behind me, I realised that I'd made a massive error and that there is no health and safety on this, unsurprisingly. My life was now being rolled out into the hands of or horns of 9 ridiculously angry bulls. So yeah, I did get bashed by a bull against Dead Man's Corner, but survived to tell the tale.
Not one of the 9 lives off. Do you reckon your life, the person who keeps all your lives, is a bit dyslexic? Because like you say, you've had more than your 9 lives.
I mean, I could have lost my life 3 times that weekend. But yeah, that was definitely the stupidest thing I've ever done. I wouldn't do it again, put it that way.
Kids who do not listen to dad, do as I say.
That story is never going to be told to my son. I know that he's going to want to do it, but it's not advisable.
And if you had to put your path into 3 short phrases or words, what do you think it would be?
Unconventional, unique, and driven by purpose. Every decision I've made has always been driven through what's my mission and how best do I achieve it.
Sort of like that North Star that's guided you, or that summit that's guided you, and it's actually beyond that point.
Yeah. Absolutely.
James, this has been absolutely incredible conversation.
Thanks for having me.
To you. It's been incredibly eye-opening. And for people who have been listening and are inspired by today's conversation and want to sort of take a deeper dive and work with you, where's the best place they can find that out?
LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me a message, say hello, and yeah, it'd be good to connect with you.
So I'll put that in the show notes. But James, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.